Hi guys, it's Grandmaster Sopika Gramishvili for Ch15. These videos will be dedicated to the theme of intermediate move. I think it's very important to be aware of intermediate moves because you might plan some kind of tactic or calculate the winning line and suddenly you might be caught into intermediate move and lose the game. So let's see some examples. We will start with the game of Rubinstein against Alyoshin. And in this position we see that black is doing not so bad, attacking the g2 pawn with the bishop and the queen. But the knight on e3 defends it, so black decided to take the knight on e3 with the idea that if white takes the rook on e3, then there is a simple checkmate on g2. But here Rubinstein took on c6, rook c6, which I'm sure that Alyoshin calculated, the line with b takes c6, f takes e3 and queen e3, king h1 and simple rook d4 or queen d4 with pretty equal endgame. But in this position, you have to pay attention to the intermediate move right now, because white did not take on e3 but played queen c1. A very nice move, pinning the rook on e3 and attacking the c6 pawn as well. So if black, for example, takes the pawn on d4, then f takes e3, rook d6 and rook f7. White has a very good position because the rook is already on 7th and the king on c8 is pretty vulnerable. Now let's see another game, another example, and this is the game, same type of game, between Richard against Vince. So white is pretty active and there is a tactic which led to a winning position with the idea of intermediate move. White took here rook e6. So the idea is that the queen is under attack, and in case of f takes c6, white simply takes the queen on c3. But what happens if simple queen f6? We see that after rook f6, black is winning the rook on e1, and white is hopeless here. But on queen f6, white has an intermediate move. Rook c1, king d7, rook f6, king e7, and rook b6. It is good advantage for white. White has two passed pawns on the king side and the pawn is already under attack. So in case of rook d7, there might be rook e1 and the game continues like this. King h2 with an advantage for white. Let's get going to the game of Ragozin against Capablanca. So pretty complicated game. The knight is already on f7 And what Ragozin planned here was the trick that if white takes, for example, rook f7, black takes rook f7, and king f7, there is a double attack. I hope you can see it. Exactly, queen f3 is the correct move, and white wins the rook and will be exchange up. Also, the trick was that after queen d5, which is actually not a good move, you might think that white can simply take queen d5, e d5, and play knight d6, but then the game will remain pretty equal. But white has a trick here with knight h6. The idea of knight h6 is that black will have a back rank problem, because king h8 is not possible because of rook f8 mate. So black has to take g takes h6, queen g3, king h8, and rook f8 mate. In the game was played queen a8. Very tricky move. Probably Capablanca planned the trick, which actually happened in the game. It was played queen f3, rook f3, and rook f7. But the point is that white could go queen h3, rook f7 is no good because of rook f7, king f7, and queen h5 again. So on queen h3, black should play either h5 or other moves, and the game will be complicated. But I think that the correct move here was bishop d4, king h1, and simple queen e7. So after rook d4, which is not good, there is a winning queen f7. Rook f7 is not good because white has problems on back rank after rook e1. So rook has to go somewhere else, rook g1. And after queen f5, black is doing very well, and white is pretty bad in this position. Let's go to another example, and this is the game Rossetto against Ch15. So black is having a pawn, but white has two bishops and some hopes to survive the game. Though after logical rook b1, there is double attack on the bishops, bishop d6, and if black here takes e d6, then position will remain complicated because it is different colored bishops, and we know that it's always difficult to win this type of positions with different colored bishops. Since the pawns on f-file is doubled, white just plays bishop c2, and in case of rook c1, simple king f3 and blockade the white squares. But on bishop d6, you have to take a moment here, look at the position, and find the intermediate move, which will lead to a win. I hope you found it, and it is f3. So it is kind of decoy also, because the king will be on f3. He's forced to take the pawn, and after rook b3, king g2, e takes d6, black is just piece up and has winning position. And let's see our last very nice example, the game Matheson against Vukovic. It is black to move here. We see pretty equal structure, but there is a problem on files. Queen e7 was played in the game, and Queen h5. White was tricky here, planning to trick black with Queen e2, which is bad actually, because after Rook f8, King takes f8, Rook f1, King goes to g8, Queen f7, King h8, and there is a mate in 2 on back rank. But there is a nice intermediate move, Queen e3, check. So White King has to go on h1. If White goes King g2, then after Queen e2, which is with check, Black will have an extra piece. So after King h1, now Queen e2, and the point is that after Rook f8, King f8, there is no more Rook f1 because Black simply takes Queen f1. And there is no other moves because all moves, Queen e2, Rook e2, leads to a losing position. I hope you enjoyed the examples. See you next time. Bye bye.